Would you like a little more tea? I just brewed this blend this morning, chamomile and a hint of orange peel. It's nothing fancy, but it's warm, comforting, the kind of warmth that doesn't ask anything of you, just like I hope this moment does. I'm glad you're here. There was a time when I'd wake up and the first thing I'd hear was someone calling for me, a child down the hall, a phone buzzing on the nightstand, even a dog whining for breakfast. Someone always needed something, and I was needed. But lately, the mornings have been different. Still, uninterrupted. I wake up to silence. The good kind, at first. The kind that makes you sigh and stretch and say, "Ah, finally." But then, it stretches. Too long. No footsteps, no voices, no messages lighting up the screen. And then, the strangest thing happens. You realize that your name hasn't been spoken in days. Not because something is wrong, but because no one needed to. There was a particular morning, clear in my memory, where I stood in the kitchen holding a cup like this one, and I thought to myself, if I didn't show up today, would anyone notice? I didn't mean it bitterly. I wasn't angry. It was more like a quiet wondering, like when you stare out the window and forget what you were looking for. I didn't get any calls that day, no texts. No one needed groceries. No one asked for advice. Not even a spam call. Imagine that. Have you ever had one of those days? The kind where your presence feels optional, where you float through your own home like a gentle ghost, touching the things you once arranged with such purpose, the family calendar, the recipe box, the coat on the hook that no one wears anymore. I don't say this with sadness, not really, just observation, like sipping tea that's gone lukewarm. I used to think that being left alone would feel like freedom, and in some ways it is. But no one tells you that too much freedom can start to feel like invisibility. There was a time, and maybe you'll nod when I say this, when my name was always on someone's lips. Ask Mom. Check with her. She'll know what to do. I wore my name like a uniform. It had weight. It had purpose. But these days, I go entire afternoons without hearing it. And I don't quite know what to call that feeling. It's not loneliness, not really. It's something softer, quieter, like being shelved, carefully, respectfully, but out of reach. And here's what I wonder. Does anyone else feel this way too? Because sometimes, late at night, I imagine there are others like me, standing by windows, holding lukewarm cups, wondering what happened to all the noise we used to hush. I once told myself, this is just a season. Everyone's busy. Everyone assumes I'm fine. But still, it lingers, doesn't it? That question, am I still someone they think of first, or just someone they assume is always there? Now, I don't mean to sound ungrateful. I have family. I have friends. I have people who love me. But love and attention are not always the same. Being loved doesn't always mean being included, and being remembered doesn't always come with a phone call. So here I sit, and maybe you're sitting too, across from me, in your own kitchen, or curled up on a couch. And I want to ask you, not out of curiosity, but companionship, when was the last time someone said your name, softly, like it mattered? When was the last time someone needed nothing from you, but still asked how you were? And if you don't remember, that's okay. You remembered enough to be here. You showed up for yourself, for me, for this quiet moment, and that alone says something. It tells me that even if the world forgets to call your name sometimes, you still carry it, gently, bravely, And I, for one, am glad to speak it out loud again, even if I don't know what it is. Because your name, it matters. You matter. Would you like another cup? Funny, isn't it? How easily we forget all the lives we've lived until something brings them back, like a photo tucked into a book, or the sound of a child laughing the way yours used to, once upon a time. Would you believe me if I said I once held the entire rhythm of a household in my two hands? It's true. There was a time I could pack a school lunch, juggle a morning meeting, run errands, and still remember which kid liked the crusts cut off and which one preferred grape jelly. I don't know how I did it. I just did, because I was needed. I played so many parts back then. Some I chose. Some were given to me the moment I said yes to love, to family, to work. I was a mother, a spouse, a daughter, a sister, a colleague, a friend. Each role had its own costume, its own lines. Some were loud, some quiet. Some I performed with grace, others I stumbled through, barely holding it together. But I showed up every day because I believed it mattered. And maybe you did too. Maybe you remember what it felt like to be the first one awake, the last one to sleep, the one who made sure birthdays weren't forgotten, who knew everyone's shoe size, who remembered to water the plants, pay the bills, check on the neighbor. We were the glue, weren't we? Holding things and people together. And now, well, now it feels like the glue has dried. The pieces are still there, held just fine, but without us, as if we're standing backstage, watching someone else step into the roles we once knew by heart. My children, they're grown, beautiful, independent, strong, just the way I'd hoped. My partner, content, self-sufficient, gentle in his habits. The office where I worked for 2 decades, they held a lovely farewell, speeches, cake, kind words, and then new hires, new systems, new routines that no longer include me. And I'm proud, truly, that I raised them well, that I left things in good hands. But if I'm being honest, and I hope this is a safe place to be, it's a strange kind of grief to be successfully replaced. Have you felt that? You spend so much of your life being indispensable, and then one day you're not. It doesn't happen with fanfare, no headlines, no thunderclap, just a slow, subtle fading. A daughter asks her friend for advice instead of you. A grandchild forgets to call back. A holiday tradition gets skipped, and no one seems to notice. And here you are, cup in hand, wondering if all those roles you once played were just temporary masks, or if they're still somehow part of you. I think they are. I think even if no one calls me mom in quite the same way anymore, I'm still a mother. In the way I check on the weather before my son flies home, or the way I save funny articles to send to my daughter, even if I forget to hit send. I'm still a friend, even if we don't meet as often, even if birthdays are marked with emojis instead of handwritten cards. And maybe that's what I'm learning, that the roles I played may have changed, but the heart that played them hasn't. We adapt, we soften, we learn to love without the spotlight. We find meaning not in being needed every moment, but in knowing we were deeply for so long, and that the echo of that still lives in the lives we touched. So let me ask you, what roles have you played? Who were you in the chapters before this one? And more importantly, which parts of those people still live inside you? I'll tell you a secret. Some days I still set 2 places at the table, even if no one's coming, not because I'm expecting company, but because somewhere inside me The host still lives, the nurturer, the one who made space for others. And maybe that's enough. Maybe we don't need a script to keep playing the part. Maybe we just need to keep loving in quiet, steady ways, with a warm meal, a folded towel, a remembered birthday, even if no one says thank you out loud. Because love doesn't retire. It doesn't get written out of the story. It just learns new ways to speak. You know what? I think you're still playing a role right now, just by being here, listening, reflecting, remembering. You're still showing up. And to me, that matters more than you know. Shall we refill our cups? We've got time. It's funny, in a way. You spend your whole life learning how to be useful, how to help. You pride yourself on it, knowing how to fold a fitted sheet, how to soothe a child's fever, how to find someone's favorite soup when they're having a bad day. These are your quiet superpowers. You wear them like an invisible cape, and then one day someone else does it instead, and no one notices you stepped aside. I remember it clearly, one of those moments that shouldn't hurt, but did. It was a family dinner, nothing grand, just a casual weekend gathering. The kind we used to have all the time when the kids were young and the noise filled every corner of the house. That day, I arrived early, like I always used to. I brought a pie, homemade, the recipe my mother gave me, the one everyone always loved. But no one asked me to bring anything. They already had dessert. Someone else had made a cake. So the pie just sat there, unopened. And I smiled. Of course I did. That's what you do, right? You say, "Oh, how lovely. The cake looks delicious." You set your pie quietly off to the side. You tell yourself it's not a big deal, but a part of you folds in, just a little. Then came dinner. Everyone was talking, loud, happy, joyful. My granddaughter told a story and everyone laughed. My son and daughter-in-law chatted about summer plans. Someone asked about vacation flights. Someone else about a new job. No one asked me anything, not even, "How have you been?" I passed the salad. I poured the wine. I watched. I nodded. But I didn't speak much. And when I did, the conversation had already moved on. It's not that they were unkind, not at all. They were just caught up, comfortable, at home with one another. And me? I was a guest in a place that once felt like mine. I don't know if you've ever felt that, like an extra puzzle piece. Not broken, not bad, just left over. A piece no one can quite figure out where to put anymore. Later that evening, I offered to help with the dishes. My daughter-in-law smiled and said, "It's okay, Mom. We've got it. We've got it." She said it kindly, and I know she meant well, but I stood there for a second, hands awkward at my sides, wondering when I became someone they needed to protect, instead of someone they turned to. And I stepped back. I told myself, this is good. They're capable. I did my job well. But inside, I felt something small break loose, not a crack, just a gentle drifting, like a boat untying itself from a dock after years of being moored there. Have you ever felt that? That quiet invitation to move aside? It doesn't come with drama. No one says, "You're not needed anymore." That would be easier in a way. No, it comes gently, wrapped in kindness. The way someone else steps in before you offer. The way they make decisions and forget to loop you in. The way they reassure you that you don't have to worry anymore. And all of that is supposed to be good, but it still hurts. And it's a strange kind of hurt, isn't it? Not loud, not visible, just persistent, like the hum of a refrigerator in a quiet room. You only notice it when everything else goes still. I sat in my car that night after the dinner, hands on the wheel, headlights not yet turned on, and I whispered out loud, just to myself, did I do something wrong? Or did I do everything right? And this is just how it ends. And I know, deep down, I did what I was supposed to. I raised strong, capable people. I taught them not to rely on me forever. I gave them wings, like every book and therapist told me I should. But no one warned me what it would feel like. To watch them fly so far, you can't even hear the flutter anymore. So I go home. I fold the blanket on the couch. I wash the plate from my uneaten pie. And I sit, not in anger, not in bitterness, just in a quiet ache, a knowing that sometimes the greatest acts of love leave us standing alone because we were the bridge, the scaffolding, the hand that held them until they could stand on their own. And then we let go. It's beautiful, it's noble, but it's also lonely. So tonight, as I sit with you, pouring this tea, I want to ask something you may not have been asked in a while. How are you doing with the letting go? Are you okay? Are you holding space for that tender, wordless grief? Because I see it, and I want you to know, just because you've stepped aside doesn't mean you've disappeared. Just because no one asks for your help doesn't mean your wisdom has vanished. You still matter, even in silence, even in shadows, even as you make room for others to shine. You are not forgotten. You are not extra. You are just transitioning. And maybe, just maybe, there is a new place at the table waiting for you. Not as a helper, not as a fixer, but simply as yourself. Would you like some more tea? Like some more? Do you ever find yourself wide awake at 2 in the morning? Not for any particular reason, not because of pain or noise, just awake. It happens more often now. I used to fall asleep the moment my head touched the pillow. Long days of work, of raising kids, of keeping everything moving. They left no room for lingering thoughts. But now, in this quiet season of life, the silence stretches and it gets loud, not in sound, in memory, in wondering, in remembering things I didn't realize I still carried. I lie there in the dark, the ceiling barely visible in the soft light from the window, and my mind, it starts to wander. Am I still part of someone's story? Would anyone notice if I didn't show up for a week? Does anyone still think of me when something funny happens? Or when they hear that old song I used to hum in the kitchen? It's not self-pity, truly. It's just curiosity, I suppose. A kind of spiritual inventory you take when the rest of the world is asleep and you're left with only your breath and your thoughts. You know, I remember seeing my own parents do this, sitting quietly in their favorite chairs, staring out the window after dinner, not talking, just being. Back then, I thought it was boredom, or maybe old age creeping in. But now I wonder, were they doing what I'm doing now? Were they talking to themselves in silence? Were they asking these same questions? I wish I had asked. There was one night, not long ago, when I pulled down an old photo album, one of the thick ones, with crinkled pages and corners yellowed with time. I didn't plan to cry, but I did. Not out of sadness, not really. It was more like something overflowed, something that had been waiting too long behind a quiet door. I looked at those photos, my children as toddlers, me in a faded apron, flour on my nose, hair pulled back, mid-laugh. I looked so alive, so central. And then I saw a picture I didn't remember taking. Me, holding my mother's hand at a park bench, her eyes closed, head resting lightly against my shoulder. I must have been in my 40s then. She was near the end. I remember now, She didn't say much in those final years, but her silence spoke volumes, and I didn't know how to answer it back then. But now I do. Now I understand. She wasn't sad, necessarily. She wasn't lost. She was just processing, looking back, and maybe looking forward too, but quietly, gently, without needing the world to know. These sleepless nights have taught me something. They've taught me that stillness doesn't always mean something is wrong. Sometimes it means something is ripening, settling, becoming sacred. And if you're up tonight, staring at the ceiling, wondering if anyone out there remembers you, let me say this: I do. You're not the only one awake. You're not the only one tracing the past with quiet fingers. You're not the only one wondering where all the noise went. And maybe, just maybe, this time of your life isn't about being remembered by others, but about remembering yourself. Who you were, yes, but also who you are. Because there's still so much of you here, so many layers that haven't been touched in years, waiting to be rediscovered. Not for anyone else, not to perform, not to be needed, just because you're still here. You're still breathing, still capable of noticing how moonlight dances on the kitchen floor, still able to love things, small things, deeply. The texture of a well-worn sweater, the weight of a cup in your hand, the way an old song finds your heart again. And yes, the ache. The ache is real, but it doesn't mean you're broken. It just means you've lived. So tonight, or tomorrow, or whenever sleep slips away, don't fight it. Sit with it. Breathe through it. Let the thoughts come, like guests at a quiet dinner, and when they've said their piece, you can send them gently on their way. And maybe, just maybe, the next night will be easier. Or maybe not. But either way, you won't be alone. Because somewhere, someone else, maybe even me, is also lying awake, holding the same silence in their chest. Would you like me to light a candle? We don't have to speak right now. We can just be together. There are some sounds that fade into the background as we grow older. The rustle of morning chaos, the jingling of keys rushed out the door, the overlapping voices calling your name. And then there are sounds that suddenly mean more than they used to, like the ringing of a phone in the middle of a quiet afternoon. I almost didn't pick up that day. It was just past 3. The sun was soft on the windowsill. I was reading something. I don't remember what, but I remember feeling peaceful, or perhaps more accurately, resigned, quiet, and then the phone rang. The first thought I had? Probably a telemarketer. You know how it is, numbers you don't recognize, people trying to sell things you don't need. I nearly let it go to voicemail, but something told me, just this once. So I answered. And on the other end, a voice I hadn't heard in years. "Hey," she said. "I don't know why, but I suddenly needed to hear your voice." It was my old friend. We'll call her Linda. We hadn't spoken in 7, maybe 8 years? Life had happened, like it always does. Moves, marriages, grief, work, no falling out. Just the slow drift of time that carries people to different shores. And now, here she was, on the line, just because she thought of me. We didn't say anything profound in that first minute. In fact, we both stumbled, laughed awkwardly, asked each other things we should probably already know. "You're still in the same house? How many grandkids now?" But then something softened, and we slipped into a rhythm that felt familiar, like a favorite sweater you thought you'd lost, but somehow found again, still warm, still fitting. We talked for over an hour, maybe two, not about world events, not about achievements, just little things. The neighbor's cat, her failing tomato plants, my stubborn knee that won't quite heal. And somewhere in the middle of it, I laughed, really laughed, in a way I hadn't in a long time. The kind of laugh that folds your body forward and makes you forget you're holding a phone. And afterward, when we both finally ran out of words, she said, "Let's not let it be another 8 years, okay?" And I said, "Let's not let it be another 8 days." After we hung up, I sat there, same chair, same room. But something had shifted. It wasn't a grand epiphany. No music swelled, no light beamed from the ceiling. But I felt it, like someone had opened a window in a room I didn't know had grown stuffy. And I realized something that I'm embarrassed to admit took me this long to learn. To be needed is not always about being useful. Sometimes it's about being remembered. Sometimes it's just about being known. Linda didn't call because she needed advice or a favor. She called because she missed my voice, my presence, my being. And that mattered. It reminded me that connection doesn't have to be structured. It doesn't need a calendar invite or an agenda. Sometimes it's just one person reaching toward another through space and memory and the invisible thread that still connects us even when we've stopped tugging on it. And I wonder, who might be thinking of you right now? Someone from school? An old neighbor? A cousin you haven't heard from in years? What if they're lying awake at night, like you've been, thinking the same thought? Would it be strange if I reached out? Maybe they're just waiting for a sign. Or maybe you are the sign. I'm not saying that one phone call will change everything, but I do believe it can change something. It changed something for me. It reminded me that I haven't vanished. I haven't slipped through the cracks. I'm still here. And sometimes the only thing separating silence from belonging is the courage to say hello. So, may I ask? And you can answer quietly, just for yourself. Who could you call just because? Not because you have to, not because there's a reason, just because they once meant something, because they still do. And maybe, just maybe, you still mean something to them too. Wouldn't that be worth hearing? Would you like to call them now? Or maybe finish your tea first. There's time. After that phone call with Linda, I sat with the memory of it like you might sit with a candle in a dark room, not rushing to do anything, just letting the glow warm the edges of a long, quiet place inside me. And then, a few days later, maybe a week, I'm not quite sure, I found myself staring at my phone again, not out of boredom, but out of possibility. I scrolled through my contacts slowly. It's funny how many names are in there that I haven't touched in years. People I used to know so well, voices I could recognize in a heartbeat. Now they're just names. Until I saw hers, my younger sister. We used to be close, not just in age, but in everything. Childhood secrets, teenage arguments, shared music, wedding dresses, baby photos. But life, as it often does, had a way of quietly widening the space between us. I don't even remember what caused the distance. Maybe nothing at all. Just time, schedules, misunderstandings that never quite healed because no one said they were wounds in the first place. I stared at her name on the screen. My thumb hovered. And then I sent a message. It wasn't long. It wasn't heavy. Just, I was thinking of you today. Would love to catch up if you're up for it. I set the phone down and made tea. Didn't expect much, but 15 minutes later, she replied, thinking of you too. Coffee this week? We met at a little cafe we used to go to years ago, back when we both wore younger smiles and worried about diapers and homework and tired husbands. And when she walked in, for a moment, I felt like I was watching someone from another life, familiar and far away. But then we hugged, and something in me, something small and tender and unsure, exhaled. We didn't talk about the gap. We didn't name the silence. We just picked up, like old shoes that still fit. That coffee turned into 2 hours of laughter, old stories, gentle apologies we never quite said, but somehow gave through our eyes. It was enough, more than enough. And then something curious started to happen. I sent another message to a friend I hadn't seen since her husband passed. I was thinking about that silly trip we took to the beach. She wrote back almost immediately. I still laugh about that umbrella that flew into the wedding. We talked. We met. We shared more than stories. We shared ourselves again. And just like that, I became the thread, the quiet weaver of reconnection. One small act of reaching out led to another, and then another. Before I knew it, there was a dinner with 3 old friends I hadn't seen in over a decade. Someone brought wine. Someone brought photos. I brought my famous apple pie, and this time they devoured it. At one point, someone turned to me and said, "I'm so glad you reached out. I've been feeling a little invisible lately, too." And there it was, that quiet miracle. Not that I was suddenly needed again in the old ways, but that I had become a kind of spark, a gentle nudge reminding people that they hadn't disappeared, and neither had I. It's strange, isn't it? How we spend so much time waiting for someone else to notice we're lonely, hoping someone else will make the first move. But all it takes, really, is one moment of courage, one hello, one I miss you. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be poetic. It just has to be honest. Would you believe me if I told you I now have standing coffee dates? That sometimes my phone rings again, not with appointments or reminders, but with real living voices, that I'm now the one people call when they want to organize something simple but meaningful. I didn't plan for any of this. I just opened the door and let the world drift gently back in. So now I want to ask you something, and I hope you'll take a breath before you answer. What would happen if you were the one to reach out first? Not out of need, not out of desperation, but out of love. Quiet, curious love. What if someone out there is waiting right now for a sign that it's okay to come home to your friendship again? What if you hold the key to your own reconnection? I didn't believe it at first, but I believe it now. And so I offer you this. You don't need to be loud. You don't need to be perfect. You don't even need to know what to say. You just need to show up with a heart that remembers and forgives, with a willingness to say, "I've missed you," even if your voice trembles. That's how the quiet miracles begin. Would you like to begin yours? We can finish our tea first, if you'd like. No rush. The other day, I was folding laundry, not because I had to, but because I still find comfort in the rhythm of it, the way cloth folds into itself, the neatness of it, the control in a world that so often feels adrift. And as I folded an old sweater, I remembered something my daughter once said years ago when she was still small enough to climb into my lap without asking. She looked up at me and said, "I don't always say it, but I like when you're here. That's all. Not 'I love you,' not 'you're the best.' Just, I like when you're here. At the time, I smiled, kissed the top of her head, went back to brushing her hair or whatever I was doing. But now, I hear it differently. Now I realize most people don't know how to say what they feel. Not really. Especially not to the ones they think are always there. We assume love is obvious. We assume presence is understood. We assume strength means you don't need reminders. But the truth is, even the strongest need to hear it sometimes, that they matter, that their presence still brings warmth, that just being here is enough. So maybe when no one called, maybe it wasn't because they didn't care. Maybe it was because they thought I was fine, that I didn't need anything, that I was settled, solid, self-sufficient. Maybe to them, I'm the sturdy tree that's always been there, and they didn't realize even trees need water now and then. And so now, when someone forgets to ask how I'm doing, I try to remember it's not always neglect. Sometimes it's trust. Sometimes it's them believing in my strength a little too much. Sometimes it's their way of saying, "You've always been the one holding us together. We thought you didn't need holding." But we all do, don't we? We all need to be held. In words, in hugs, in glances that say, "I see you." And I've learned that sometimes, to be seen, we must let ourselves be visible again, not in grand gestures, but in small ones. A phone call, a handwritten note, a seat at the table, even when no one asked us to bring anything. These are the quiet ways we say, "I'm still here and I still care." So if you've ever felt forgotten, if you've ever stood in a room full of people you love and wondered if they still see you, let me be the one to remind you, someone still needs you. Maybe not in the way they used to. Maybe not for lunch money or rides to school or help with math homework. But they need your wisdom. They need your stories. They need the comfort of knowing you're still in their corner, even if you've stepped out of the spotlight. You are more than the roles you've played. You are more than the help you've given. You are more than the silence that sometimes fills your home. You are a presence, a witness, a keeper of memory, of love, of gentleness, and you still have so much left to offer. Not because anyone demands it, but because love, when given freely, never runs out. It multiplies, it ripples outward, it plants itself in places you may never see, and grows anyway. So tonight, before the sun sets, before you turn off the lights and settle into your chair, ask yourself gently, who in my life might need to hear my voice? And then, even more gently, ask yourself, when was the last time I let them know I still want to be heard? It's never too late to begin again. Never too late to remind the world and yourself that you are still here, still listening, still loving, still very much needed. So, thank you, my friend, for sharing this tea with me, for sitting with me through the quiet, through the ache, through the soft rediscovery of connection. You are not alone. You never were. And if you ever wonder whether someone still needs you, let this moment be your answer. I do, and I suspect others do too. They're just waiting for you to speak first. Would you like to stay a little longer? The kettle's still warm, and there's always time for one more story.